Justice correspondent for The Nation and the Lewis Black of Lawyers and Politics. Thank you so much, Elie, for joining me this evening. Now, I want everyone to understand what is actually happening in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial right now. You've tweeted and talked about the fact that the judge is racist, and you think that impacts how he is managing this trial. First, just for the audience to understand, why do you say that this judge is racist, and how does that actually impact the trial? Because those are words that get thrown around a lot, and the Tucker Carlsons and Glenn Greenwalds of the world get upset because they're used to defending people like that. But why does that matter, and why did you make that charge?
Because if you look at the judge's history, he has a history of disregarding civil rights information, rulings, and that sort. If you look at a specific history in this case, all of his pretrial motions tended to favor the defendant, favor Kyle Rittenhouse, even leading up to this trial, and then certainly his behavior on the in the trial as the presiding officer of the trial has just been grotesque in terms of his combativeness with the prosecution, his willingness to let the defense slide on many issues, his American flag tissue box, his cell phone ringtone that is actually the same song that was played at the beginning of the Trump rallies, which, by the way, is one of the only songs that Trump doesn't get a cease and desist letter whenever he uses. It's never just one thing, and that's the thing that I think that other people have trouble understanding. It's not just one issue or one decision. I'm not saying 1 + 1 = 2. I'm saying 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. And that while you can kind of defend any individual decision, when you look at the totality of his actions, what you have is a racist, biased judge who is putting his thumb on the scale in every way he can for the defense and for Rittenhouse in this case.
I suspect that if there was a judge in a trial who, when their phone played, it was like a Black Lives Matter anthem or something else like that, or, Screw the Police by Public Enemy, people would have a problem with that. And yet this guy is able to get away with everything he's doing. I want to play some audio from today, which sort of speaks to your point and get your thoughts on the other side. This is something that just randomly came out of the judge's mouth today, talking about ordering food for lunch during the trial.
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor.
First off, who says Asian food? who actually says that? But Elie, this sort of speaks to what you're talking about. I mean, it's this sort of off-color, insensitive, racist commentary. The first question that I think a lot of people have, whether or not they're following you or even if they're just picking up this trial, is what can be done about a judge like this? Because all of these things that you've laid out would seem to me be reason to call a mistrial or seek a change of venue, because clearly this guy has biases that are affecting the administration of this case.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing can be done. He's an elected judge, so like the time to get rid of him was during, whenever he was last up for election. As I understand it, I haven't independently verified this, but I have seen that he was initially appointed to his position by a Democratic governor, which kind of just goes to show how little Democrats pay attention to the courts in these situations. The judge is the king of his or her own courtroom. There is very little that can be done. Even this kind of motion for a mistrial, who gets to decide? The judge gets to decide whether or not he is so prejudiced that he needs to order a mistrial. You think that's going to happen? And sure, there's a chance to appeal it. But remember, and this is another thing that people kind of forget, remember that generally mistrials favor the defense. Because what's going to happen on Friday is that the defense is asking for a mistrial and to dismiss the case with prejudice so that Rittenhouse can never be retried again. And if that motion gets denied, remember that if Rittenhouse is acquitted, that decision cannot be appealed because that would place Rittenhouse in double jeopardy. And that would be a violation of Rittenhouse's Fifth Amendment rights. So once you draw a biased, prejudiced judge in our state court system, there is very little you can do about it. And quite frankly, every African-American attorney I know knows that. I don't think the prosecution has been bad. All right, I think that sometimes Twitter's a little bit mean. I don't think they've been bad at their job, but I do think that they were not ready to go up against a judge that's not on your side, because usually prosecutors expect a judge to be on their side. So if you look at the difference between this prosecution versus how Keith Ellison went at Derek Chauvin, right? Keith
Right.
Ellison came out there with that defense trial energy, right? Like he had a dream team, he had defense, like he was ready for anything. And I don't know that this prosecution team was ready to be to deal with fighting not just Rittenhouse's defense lawyers, but also the judge. It's a huge problem.
When the judge asks the entire room if there are any veterans here and demands that the entire room clap for a veteran, and the one veteran in the room happens to be the expert witness coming forth to testify on behalf of Kyle Rittenhouse, that's an example of a pretty biased courtroom. Elie Mystal, thank you so much for your time. We will bring you back as we're going through the rest of this trial.
Thank you.
Ahead.